All right, so today we are going to work on a pedestal bowl. This is sort of like maybe a small ice cream or parfait cup. The top section is going to be made from 3/4 of a pound of clay, and the bottom section is going to be made from a 1/2 pound of clay. Again, you can alter that depending on your needs, but I'm going to go through it and we're going to jump in. This is going to be a 2-piece object. So we are throwing the foot separate from the pot itself. So I'm going to start off by centering my clay. If you are struggling at all with centering, I have a video on that and you should definitely check it out. I'm going to make sure that my clay is very well centered. When we work with smaller pieces of clay, it's really important that we take our time and get them centered. Okay, so I've got my clay centered, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drop my hole. Now, I am not going to be trimming a foot on this pot, so I'm dropping my hole to about 1/4 of an inch from the bed. I'm opening in a conical sort of opening so that I can get a nice continuous curve on the inside of my pot. When I'm making my pulls, I'm primarily pushing from the outside and I'm supporting from the inside and I'm pulling my wall up in a V shape. This particular pot I kind of think of as like an ice cream bowl or a parfait cup. So I'm leaving a thick rim here so that I have a little bit of an overhang, and so that when I go to scoop my ice cream or my yogurt or whatever, that I have a little lip to catch against so that it doesn't just fall out of my pot. This will be my last pull. I'm looking for 1/4 inch wall thickness before I start to shape. Okay, so I've achieved my 1/4 of an inch wall thickness. I'm going to suck up the moisture from the inside of this, and I'm going to start to shape. So I'm reducing my wheel speed. I'm letting a little bit of new moisture, and now my pressure is coming from the inside. I'm supporting from the outside, and I'm slowly moving my middle finger from the inner center and slowly coming up the wall, stretching my clay evenly all the way around. Suck up the water and kind of evaluate my shape. I'm pretty happy with my shape here, so I'm going to give an inward angle to my rim, so I'm supporting just underneath of the rim. And you can either use your finger or a tool for this. I'm going to use my wooden rib, and I'm working with the spin of the clay to give a gentle inward angle. So I'm going to take my wooden knife tool and I'm just going to create a little undercut underneath of here. And then I'm going to move my pot and I'm going to start making my foot. I'm going to put this outside so that it dries. All right, so now I'm going to be throwing the foot component of this pot. We can really make these deep feet and really exaggerated profiles by throwing these parts separately. So this is a 1/2 pound of clay, which is very small. Again, we could change the proportions of this if you wanted it to be taller. So I'm going to start my wheel spinning. When I'm centering a small piece of clay, it's really challenging. I tend to keep my hands really open so that I can see what's happening here, because I really need this to be very centered in order to be precise. Okay, so I have my clay centered in this small mass, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm opening, and when I'm opening, I will open all the way to the wheel head. This can be really strange if you've never done it before, but we are plunging that hole all the way down so that we can see the bat. I'm now going to pull my finger toward myself and just draw my foot out a little bit, and now I'm going to start to pull up. When I'm pulling up, I'm going to be coming in so that I can create the shape that I'm looking for. So I'm supporting on the inside with my left hand, pushing on the outside with my right hand, and just slowly bringing that clay up. I'm going to take a couple passes and get my wall thickness to be nice and even. I'm going to sort of support my wall and create a little bit of a thickness here. All right, I'm going to take my rib now and I'm cutting away this extra material. My left middle finger's on the inside supporting. I'm just removing this extra material at the base, removing this extra clay from the wheel head, and then I'm compressing against my rib. So I'm pushing out from the inside against my rib. I'm always working with the tool in the spin of the clay. So if the clay is coming past the tool, I want to be at an acute angle to it. I definitely don't want to be perpendicular, and I don't want to go opposing to the wheel spin, and that's because it just creates more friction. And friction is my sort of enemy here. So we want to work with the spin of the clay. Now we have this nice compressed cone, and I'm going to have an indent with my rib. And to do that, I'm using the same angle of the rib that I use in the bottom of the pot, and I'm just going to slowly start to push in from the outside against my rib, making a pretty strong change in direction. All right, I'm going to go just a little bit further. I'm going to kick my wheel speed up just a little bit, and I'm going to continue to push in. Okay, so I'm happy with the shape of this. I do want to give a little bit more of a straight angle to this base, so I'm just going to put my rib back on it and create a little bit of a more crisp area. And then the last thing I'm going to do for this little foot is I'm going to create a little undercut at the bottom. It's going to make it easier for me to cut this off a little bit later and join it to the bottom of my pot. The other thing that I need to consider is that this is going to get attached to the round bottom of a bowl. So I'm just going to give this a little bit of an inward angle so that it can accommodate the curve a little bit better. So I'm going to let this get to like leather hard, and then I'm going to join the two together. I'm going to trim the bowl and then join the two together. Okay, so now I'm going to be trimming and joining my foot to my pot. I don't have a ton of material in the bottom of here because I dropped my hole pretty low, which is what we want. We want equal wall thickness throughout. So I'm going to place this upside down and just quickly get it centered. And then when I trim, I tend to use 3 lugs of clay evenly distributed around the pot. So I usually just take these and I roll them into a little coil. I support the pot as I put it on. Sometimes I will bend them to accommodate the wall a little bit, and then just pushing down and away. Again, I want to try to place these equidistant around the pot so that it holds my pot in place as I'm trimming and joining the foot. I'm going to use my trimming tool to start by trimming off the corner of the clay and starting to get a nice transition into the foot of my pot. I'm just trimming that corner away until it sort of sits flush with the walls of my pot. Alright, I'm going to use a firm metal rib and just sort of go over this to compress the surface of it, removing any of these trimming marks that I had left behind. Make sure that your rib is nice and clean so that I don't leave additional information from the rib itself. Now I want to center my foot on the bottom. So I'm just going to start by placing it in what I perceive is the middle of my pot. And I'm just going to slowly spin my pot, watching that foot. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a line using my pin tool. Just gives me an idea of where my foot is laying on my pot. And I'm just going to use the spin of the wheel to allow me to score this with my rib. I'm going to take the base and I'm going to wet my rib, and I'm just going to go to town on the part that's going to come in contact with pot. Okay, so now I have it scored. I do want to score this well enough that you sort of see some additional material coming out kind of from the sides of this to ensure that I get a really good connection to my pot. I'm going to rest this on, and it will float for a second so that I can get this centered on here. All right, and once that's on there, you can do a series of different things. So I have some extra material here. I can simply just take my finger and come in contact with that material and kind of merge these two together. And then I can take my wooden knife tool potentially and just reach down inside of here and just make sure that we remove any of that extra material. If there's any trimming that needs to be done to the foot, we can take our tool and we can just remove a little bit of this interior material. You shouldn't have to do a lot here. We're getting this trim to be pretty nice. We're throwing it to sort of be done. We want to try to avoid any water here. We really would like to do things via compression. And so I'm going to pull my lugs off, and we can kind of look at our finished pot. There we go. You can see that my pot is still pretty soft, so I'm going to be very careful. You might want to let this get to be leather hard so that yours is not flexing, but this is the profile of that pot.